You want me to count down for you?
10, 9, 8.
Okay, we're late, first time ever. Good evening, thank you for coming to the Plan 2040 Citizens Advisory Committee. It is September 4th, we're calling this meeting to order officially. Thank you all, we appreciate it. We're in various working groups this evening. So, and we have had some previous prior discussions to the regional map plans, which you can see behind us. And we will have some more discussions on that. But I want to first give a chance to do administrative information. And so we would like to start with letting the zoning director speak.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good.
I'm glad I got to come again tonight. You'll probably speak to the vast majority. Just a quick note. You know, as I get my feet wet now, I think I'm in my 6th week. We continue to do a tremendous amount of recruiting. You may have heard us say in the past, we still have about 13 existing and new vacant positions that we're in the process of filling, recruiting for it. If you've ever done recruitment at the government level, it's a very process. And we don't always get every candidate that we want for a variety of reasons. So we're working on that. Kind of along with that, one of the things that I guess I got to do, could be good, could be bad, that I have the ability to fill a vacant, basically deputy director position that is not in the merit system. It's appointed. And so I've chosen, I'll get it.
One of the members, hello.
What I've decided to do is bring someone that has worked for me 3 different times. Some of you might have dealt with her in the past, Christina Papa. Remember that name? So she will be coming with us on September 30th. And some of you might be thinking, well, gosh, what position does she go into? Does she displace anyone? Sort of. She comes in as really the deputy director, and she will overall oversee the long-range planning function. Because we've got a bunch of things that were in play or thinking of that I'm not really going to be able to talk about tonight, but they're good. The other side, though, is Cindy Carrier has been your long-range planner. And I'm very hopeful. Cindy, I think, and I work very well together. We have a lot of shared ideas. She's going to continue in the role that she has. And as we frame and figure out GDP and region plans and what we can do with the zoning code, I really want her to be able to concentrate on that. And so that's what we will continue. It really won't look a lot different than what we're doing now. But I'm excited. I know when I mentioned it to Cindy, her reaction was, oh, I remember her. She went to bat for us in the transition. I don't know if that's okay to say. But I think it's a good thing. I think it makes us stronger, and we proceed and do our jobs as best we can. So I'm looking forward to that because it's a person I'm very, very familiar with, and I know the capabilities. And you all know you're in very good hands with Cindy and her team. And what you're going to see over the coming months is the size and capability of this team grow exponentially under Cindy's leadership. Like I said, there's a variety of these new positions that are coming in. They have to come in the long range. Because right now, it's Cindy and 3 folks. That's it. So that's about what you need to handle the general development plan. But it doesn't allow us to break out and be able to take on the regional planning, which will probably be good. And any thoughts or questions on that? Your reaction when just hearing, how did you know of Christina?
I worked with Christina on the transition team, and she won a place in my heart the first time I met her. When we were, everyone, especially Dan was there, was talking about modifications, and at one point she stopped and said, will someone please explain to me what these modifications are and why they are so important? And as I said, and then from then on, she's very well organized.
Yeah.
She does a good job of a lot of things. So I look forward to her coming.
Very good. And we'll be a very good team member. Mr. Dodd. Tom Fett.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I just had announced that she will be coming on as one of the directors for long range planning. So.
Oh, really? Yep.
And what's the
Timeframe? September 30th. Yeah. It's the earliest we can get her. She worked for me in Queen Anne's, in Parks and Planning Commission, and then Charles County. And Charles County tried very, very hard to retain her and move her into the director position. I think we were very fortunate that she turned that down. Okay, I'll get out of your hair.
Thank you. Cindy had to go downstairs because the door's locked. So I apologize. We just went down. She's trying to figure out what's going on with that. So, okay. We're going to go over the regional map, but in the meantime, Gary has some information that he wanted to present about his proposal for, remember, you on the agenda for this one for today?
For the,
For your tours.
yeah, you know, the county, I don't get down to South County very much. I don't get around the whole county. And I'm guessing a lot of you guys don't get to Jessup. And you don't get to Crofton or Smyrna Park or whatever. And, you know, we've been, the last 20, 30 years that we've been tracking this stuff. We've had just a massive amount of development. It doesn't appear to have any basis in good planning. I know we have one director of planning and zoning come in and kind of like, what happened here? Which was our employee weekend. So, you know, my feeling is a plan that where we're trying to go with this thing. We need to learn what works, what doesn't work. We need to understand what in the code has produced desirable end results, modifications, or issues that we need to learn about. Just this particular small area plan, pull it out, and my wife reviewed it, and she says, well, none of that got it. So the question is that we're going to be staying here for a year, coming down all these good words, and then nothing gets done. It's a waste of people's time. That's what happened just there. So I feel like for me, and I discussed this with Mr. Pittman last week, was I need to know the whole, I mean, if we weren't, if we didn't want to do tours, learn about areas outside your community, then we could do, this could be the General Development Planning Committee for West County, pretty much. But I don't think that serves the purpose, because I think as a collective body, we have a lot of ideas. What I see in Jessup, somebody else from another part of the county might have a great idea. What did you think about this? But if you've never been to Jessup, you wouldn't know to suggest that. Same thing for me. It's, you know, we're getting to the point in West County, and Jessup, and I'm confused that as a loose term, is that we've got to that point where we're at capacity, and we still have an awful lot of potential development in the pipeline. So the question is for me, how do we meet the needs as been expressed by the county executive office for additional housing, whatever? You can't do much more in Jessup other than taking an R1 lot, turn it into an R5 or R10, and go up. And the quality of life, to me, needs to balance the development and quality of life. That's been important to Jessup. And the feedback I've heard at different meetings, these listening meetings, it's the same thing. People want to be able to get in and out of the cars. And I think the best way for us to understand what the issues are and then come back and discuss it is to go out and do a very short but a guide tour. This is the things that we're facing in our community, in our area. And we're looking for ideas on how, what can we do now? We're kind of in damage control. What can we do now to going into the next general development plan to make sure we're guiding our county in the right direction? So I think it's a pretty valuable thing. I know it's a time burden on people to understand that. I don't think everybody we don't need to have 100% participation, but those who are interested in learning what's going on around the county, and what the issues are, so we can support, somebody, I don't know, from Severna Parks, here's what our concern was. I saw that, I understand that, I support that. So, and I think that getting those kind of consensus decisions made requires educating people as to what's going on around the county. So I would like to do something. If the group does not want to as a whole, the community of Jessup can still be willing to host that evening. Just talk about what's going on in Jessup, maybe Maryland City participate, and let you know what we're faced with. Get your support or your recommendations. That's where I was going.
Thank you, Gary. And I think most of you saw his original email, and there's been lots of comments going back and forth. Just to clarify that we're not going to be able to do it as a county-sponsored event. So if you all are interested in doing that, then I would suggest that you break off and start your own group, network, whatever, and Gary can pick a night that he'd like to host it at the Jessup, Jessup Improvement Association, yeah. And then if somebody else wants to do it for Maryland City or whatever, we can't even get everybody to these meetings, so I can't do a Google Docs to get everybody to be able to do that. But if you all want to learn more, if you want to do by video, if you want to do by webinar, whatever you want to do, I encourage you to go to the 23 listening sessions that we went to, 21. So we learned a lot from different areas there.
Well, we're not going to take tours, and I understand that. But there is some, it seems to me that there is some value in taking 10 minutes at least for each group to define their area, that with things that are special to that area that are different than the collective things that we're all going to look at. And so there is some validity when we start looking at land use and specific definitions of knowing what the additional barriers or opportunities are in Brooklyn and in Breslin and Severna Park and Annapolis, which nobody knows about. I think they wagered that everybody in this community doesn't know a single thing about the issues in the municipality of that city. So there is some value in looking at, because we're going to be making some recommendations and decisions. So why not take a time when we can verbally describe?
So, and I think that we'll be able to do that to some extent, but we're not going to be able to do it for 21 different areas. I know.
You've got 9, you don't have 21.
Well, no, representatives. We're talking about, because you're talking about doing each one and trying to do that. So it's something that we can look at, or like I said, it may be homework. It may be that we could write up, everybody would have a format to write up something and be able to hand it out so that people can study it when we get to that point. Well,
I have a question that's more geared towards staff. Are there best practices how other counties
yes.
implement it?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are definitely that, and a lot of that is available online for links. Frederick County just is about to finish theirs. They have a very good one. And we've been looking at sisters, what is Hartford County doing? Montgomery County, what is Prince George's County doing? Because
I mean, in terms of
but there are other
participation.
yeah, of
Well,
learning
it's
or engaging.
typically defined at the beginning of a planning process of whether or not you're going to have a citizens advisory committee like you have, or a steering committee that might be made up of people that have specialties, like dealing with land use and economics, etc. And that's all kind of set out. We've already set out this process, and we've already kind of, we started with a different CAC and 8 listening sessions plus a bunch of other, 50-some community-specific engagement exercises, along with a new CAC, 17 visioning meetings. At some point, we have to cut off that portion of it and you take that information in that we've gathered for the last 2 years and synthesize it and see what the issues are. I don't have a problem with Ellen's suggestion of each of you taking 10 minutes or so, but it will push the schedule out at least one meeting. If that's something you want to do, that's just to keep in mind. Eventually, we're going to have to, we have to complete this plan. So.
Because you guys do have valuable data that you guys did collect as you went through.
Sir, would you like to come up front?
I can, right, but I think
Well,
one of the
because
key
we're
things,
being,
where
we're being taped, so everybody needs to speak up.
where I just came from, in Charles County. I started basically the day that Charles County adopted its 2016 comprehensive plan. Do you know when they started that? 2009. It took them 7 years. And the end result is they went up and down with the CAC, back and forth with different interest groups. They got close, then they got pushed back. They got close, something happened, there were changes in elections, different elected officials came in. But even with all that time and energy put into trying to reach a consensus, if that's possible, the day that the 2016 comp plan was adopted by the then county commissioners, they made 29 major amendments to that plan that radically altered the plan, which then, several years later, caused a change in elected officials. So one of the things, I agree completely with what Cindy's saying, is that at the risk of not being able to cover every topic, every subject to the nth degree and noodle every idea, you gotta weigh that versus your ability to move the product forward. Because at the end of the day, things that we'll still have to do, we have a general plan which provides general policy guidance throughout the county on land use. General. We still got to do the region plans. We've got to completely overhaul major parts of the zoning code. That's actually the heavier lifting work that has to be done. And I was also going to say, just on the idea of touring, at a point in time, much sooner than you think, we will be starting those region plans. Each of those region plans is going to be a planning effort. There may need to be code changes. There will likely be a comprehensive rezoning component. In each one of those, it's going to take 18 months to 3 years to do. What I would suggest is at the point where we start those region plans is really the point to get an understanding, because there'll be CACs, just like you, in every single one of those. That's the place, I think, to bring the CAC into understanding that community. You're working off, in a way, you're at 30,000 feet. So keep in mind that, again, if we don't keep our eye on the ball, we'll end up where I just came from. 7 years trying to make a plan. And I think in this audience, we all know that if we find ourselves in that kind of a situation, collectively we will have failed the county. So just thought.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of Ellen's idea. If we could come up with a template that says, that helps every area fill in what's unique about their area, what's really, everybody really needs to understand this, you know, these 2 or 3 things. I think, and then we got to present them using the maps. I think it would be very useful. A lot of us weren't able to go to those planning sessions. There's always a sort of the starting process was a little, you know, it was just hard to get into the groove of it. So I just think we owe it to ourselves to do that.
How about if Kristen and Ellen, would you like to come up with that template?
Sure.
If we do that, there are now territories that we're talking about right now that used to have 2, 3 people that were part of it. That could be, we could do the 10-minute presentation as a group of 3 or a group of 2 to save time, rather than going the other route. In other words, if you really want to do it for one meeting, we can have Alan, myself, Amy, as an example, talk about that particular zone for 10 minutes about what we think is unique, if you really want to get that out. But I think only one meeting for all of us collectively to do it.
If that, I agree. So it might be homework. It might be that we take the template, we fill out the templates, we turn them back in, and then you all have a chance to make them at your leisure and learn as much as you want with references to math. Alan?
I just have one comment. I think we need to remember this is a high-level document, 30,000 feet. It's about vision, objectives, where we want to be. It's not about the details. It's not about the details. A lot of this is grass. Right? We need to think about what we want to be in a few years when we grow up as a county.
Thank you. And on that note, we're going to change to the regional map. So we've had 3 comments that we want to let you know about. Is that we have an adjustment between 4 and 3. And this, instead of using east-west highway, will move up and go from Brightview to Obrecht Road and then continue. So this side of Millersville will be in 4, that side of Millersville will be in Glen Burnie. Okay?
What were
You
those?
see that?
What were those roads again? Brightview, Obrecht?
Brightview, Obrecht to
Jumpers Hole.
east, what?
It should be Jumpers Hole.
Jumpers Hole, thank you, the chart, this is so Brightview to Obrecht to Jumpers Hole. This will slightly come down to 4, and the rest will go up into Glen Burnie, okay? Okay?
What was the reason for that?
Because it was talked about among a lot of people. And so this was more Severna Park, and that is more Glen Burnie. The other one was Region 8, I believe, was Crensville.
We didn't bring that one up yet.
Okay, that is going to stay as discussed
You don't need to see it now.
during
right?
our meeting, okay? So there were some questions because there was Seven Run Environmental Center, and there were some questions about that. We talked to the players and agreed that that's gonna stay that's the way it
Down in
was.
there anyway. You can see
It's
it's down.
down, out here.
Yes.
So all of Severn Run is going to be part of 3 and not divide Severn Run in half. The environmental center, not Severn Run environmental center. Okay? Any other questions on regional plans? Are we ready to post them and get comments?
Yeah.
All in favor? Yes? Good? Okay. Cindy's going to explain why there is a poster board in the back.
So Kate, at your suggestion, when people bring up strategies, and so just to keep our meeting flowing, just quietly get up and write your strategy on the board. I keep a file. People, offer strategies and stuff, so that when we get to that point, that we will go back and review those. So that's just a way of getting your thoughts on paper, or you can hand them to me and I'll keep them in the file.
Yes. So when you think of something and you want it to be remembered down the road, write it on that flipboard. We will have that from now on at every meeting, so that we will keep a running tab. Let's not forget about this. Let's not forget why we did this, why we chose it to be that way. Okay? Okay. I'm sure everybody read the minutes and commented accordingly. So do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 21st?
So moved.
So Will moved, Kate seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, so now we are into the review process for the region plan.
Did,
Hey, you want to just skip down to,
is this where you want to begin?
well, that's just FYI. I mean, that was just so they give everybody a sense of typically how long,
Did everybody have a chance to look over this, that was handed out? At
Yes, they did, because it was homework.
Okay.
With a reminder.
So, it includes 36-month time frame, the staffing needs, typically a lead planner and assistant planner from FPC, but then a number of other staff from around the county will be needed to assist and help develop these plans. And then the content for each plan would look a good bit. A lot of portions would be a lot similar to what would be this general development plans you're working on now, drilling down to some details that are specific to each of these regional areas.
I'll go back up. So part of the reason for doing this, one of the things we heard during the listening sessions was that amongst the 16 small area plans, there was no consistency. So I think Broadneck didn't even discuss transportation, and it's a huge part of the issues in that planning area. So this is an attempt sort of to standardize the plans, but recognize also that there will be unique features in each of the areas that will be addressed beyond this. So it was sort of to get your feedback on this outline. If you have any thoughts on that, let us know. This isn't something we will go out to the public with at this point. I think we need to keep thinking about it as we go through this process, so you are familiar with all the steps of this process, maybe. But if you have thoughts now,
Let us know, because as Cindy alluded to, a vision statement for one of the small area plans was keep South County rural. The next one was 2.5 pages. So we need to have a format. We need to be able to compare them. We need to be able to compare them realistically, whether they were implemented or not. That was another issue about implementation. And so we need to make sure that we have consistency between them, and that we all are able to easily look at it and say, okay, in this plan they wanted this, in that plan they didn't, or they did want that, or how it compares. So that's why we're trying to make it formatted and to make it accountable and implemented.
So do you envision a portion of this being carryover? In other words, there are things in all of the area plans now that didn't get implemented. Some of which, not necessarily many, but some of which we heard in the listening sessions people still want. So would you envision something that is not as a new thing, but things that have been time tested, that are flagged for continued attention?
to discuss, yes.
Yeah.
Things that didn't get implemented.
And that's what we did at the listening session.
Right.
When we went down and they rated what wasn't implemented and what they thought should be implemented, then that will carry over. And that will be one of the things. Now, this is not going to, if you want to continue and do a regional plan, we'd love to have you, but start thinking about who in your area might be interested in doing something, who would be good to do it, and then also we need to make sure that we inform them and that they know, and that information that they want to continue what wasn't implemented before will carry over.
And I'm thinking specifically, Elizabeth, of flagging that somehow, identifying it as a continuation as opposed to as though it were new.
In the outline.
In the outline.
Okay.
So that people can look at this outline if at some point you publish it and say, this is what I talked about in the listening plan, here's where I know it's going to show up in the new regional plan.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And once we finalize all this.
Melanie, if you could clarify for me, because so who's making the judgment of if it was accomplished or not per the previous small area plan? Because I know for the Mayo Peninsula specifically, we were provided a document and it told us, okay, the county, somebody within the staff, said that X, Y, and Z were all completed successfully. And I know that there are many on the mayor from this one who disagreed with that assessment. So where is the
I would
balance
say
of?
if there's disagreement, that you would write up that disagreement and sit down and talk with us at
We're
some
gonna need
point.
to speak up, folks.
Okay, Mr. Sorry, Council, please.
Okay.
So if there is disagreement, if your community does not agree with the county, and this was done on a countywide level because it was, I mean,
Huge task.
well, the recommendations are carried out by many different departments, not just, planning and zoning. So, if there is disagreement, write up what you don't agree with and meet with us, set up a meeting to discuss that, because maybe there's just a communication issue, I don't know.
Well, and also, I think also that they could start new. We don't want to keep going back and rehashing. We know that there were issues, we know that some things didn't get done, one thing or another. So if that is still a priority, like what Kate was saying, and you want to see it done, then it needs to be carried over. But we can't carry over everything, because if it didn't get done, and it may not be able to be done, or whatever.
I guess my
So-
concern is that something may be lost. I mean, maybe we will or maybe we won't recreate that goal. But if it's supposed to, as we're talking about, kind of not losing what we had before, that's still a priority. I guess my question is, do all of the reps, because I'm an at-large rep, but I'm aware of what the mayor is going through. Are you all aware that there was an evaluation of what was right? Okay. So, and do you know if your community, or do you agree with what resulted in that, if it was accomplished or not? I mean,
I think there was mixed.
there was some mix.
There was
Okay.
mixed. There was definitely some, which was the same thing. Everybody has some voice or opinionated that it may not have been completed, or partially completed, or how much was completed one thing or another. But we need to look at forward.
Yeah.
So if that is something that wants to be continued and to be done, then you would think that the new regional planners committee would know that that was a goal that needs to be implemented still. And they would continue on their outline going forward.
It would certainly be part of the background data for that area.
Okay, Gary?
I think it's a more deep issue that we've got to deal with. There was 2004 and years before that. We were collecting data. We had meetings, town hall meetings, and so on and so forth. This was printed and passed by the council and everything, and then nothing happened. And so we're going through this process again where you're collecting more data. The question is, why didn't it happen? And what can we do differently this time around when this building here, planning and zoning, ignored the wishes of the community? The hearing officers ignored the wishes of the community, that county, the board of appeals, and the politicians. So, we can do all this for the next year, and what's going to come up?
Okay, but remember, Gary, and I disagree with you on that. They did not ignore them. They just may not have implemented them to the degree of which everybody wanted to have them implemented. So, okay, but we've had this discussion with the administration. The administration knows that the implementation was an issue. The county council knows that it is an issue, and it is something that we are going to be able to continue in. They know that we are going to make sure by our citizen involvement, by the representatives here, that we will ensure that it is implemented.
So, I'm going to stay back here, but one of the things to keep in mind is that in every jurisdiction I've ever known to work in, there is always public dissatisfaction when a plan is adopted with the degree that implementation occurs. Now, what I'm also going to say is the places that I saw implementation occur most successfully did something different than we've done here. And that is, as we go through with each of the region plans, remember, there's a plan, There may be text amendments. Text amendments to implement the plan is implementation. A comprehensive rezoning component that goes with each of the regions is implementation. And then it's either the CAC who helped do all this work, or a companion group comes in as a follow-on, and they become the appointed citizen advisory committee to do implementation. And in Alexandria, I ran 2 of these groups, implementation advisory groups. And it was a group of citizens, some of whom participated in developing the plan, but others who came in later, a variety of city or county officials, public works, police, fire, all recreation parks, all the entities who help with implementation or are in charge of big parts of it. We brought the budget and finance people in because much of the implementation requires spending of either operational money or capital. And the point is, the implementation advisory group stays with the plan after it's adopted for the life of the plan until it's time to update it again. We didn't do that here, did we? And again, what happens to planners, to elected officials, to county executives, the goal seems to be the plan for the government in general. And we try and do implementation as best we can, as funds are available, as interest in other departments or new people coming in. But for the citizen, the plan is a process to get to implementation. And we haven't gelled as well as we can here. So one of the things when they're showing you a template of how we want to do future regional plans, it doesn't end with plan adoption. It can't. Because we wrong put ourselves in our ability to do implementation. So that's one of the key things that I don't think anybody who worked on a small area plan here had any experience with that, right? Would it have helped in Jessica?
That would go a long way to help. I think that's not the total.
Yeah, built into those plans
So-
was, well, one, there was not an implementation plan, but also almost every one of them, if not all, recommended that there be, the sort of thing that you're talking
Yeah.
about, but
And you
but
can
no one
repurpose
ever
free
did.
cash.
And so,
And then
And do you have a legal requirement for status as a plan, what you come up with?
no.
No, but it's a best practice.
That's probably something now in Delaware, where I was a commissioner, we had the status of the plan for these things.
We do always do that. But again, what happens is when the plan is done, there is a tendency in local governments to move on to the next thing. Or something else gets hot with the county council. They want us to move on to doing this and this. And the people who would have helped with the implementation aren't there to do it. So the best way I've seen it done is we've got to continue with an organized group.
We have had this discussion before Steve was part of the administration. The administration is all on board with this. The county council, I've already spoken with everybody at the county council, and it will be different this time. And us, as the citizens and the residents, will make sure that it is different this time. Because I'm sure we will go down to county council and say our 2 cents for it. And we've asked for implementation status reports to go back to the county council.
So let me just add, in Alexandria, what we did, these groups had an implementation schedule. It was basically a blank report card that, when I say the group, handed out to people in the community. And that allowed the community to evaluate. Once a year, each group would go back to the city council, who would be the county council here, and we would report on our implementation activity. And it would be a situation we were able to accomplish A, B, and C in the schedule. We have an issue because we were going to make this pocket park, but we found out there's an easement for X, Y, and Z. We need to buy that easement back. We need $200,000 in the capital budget to do that. The council would debate whether or not that made sense, but it was the only way we could do the implementation. Very public, on camera. All the members of the implementation advisory group are participating in it, and it became a real community thing. I mean, I spent 3 days in a cherry picker painting an old paint color. Because that's what it made sense to do implementation. It's not just writing plans.
Ellen?
There is a natural tension between public participation and professional staff. It exists. If we are going to be successful in seeing that some implementation does in fact go, there has to be written into our processes some things that deal with the collaborative process. If that was missing in the last plan, then it needs to be corrected this time to ensure that, in fact, participatory government is respected.
We will make sure it is in the plan. Like I said, the administration is already
Yeah, but
working on it.
administration changes.
It's true. Nope, you're right. That is a good point. So, okay, any other comments on this?
On the
Okay,
document itself?
seeing none on the document itself.
Yeah, I have a question about the size of the regional area planning committees, which says comprised of 11 people. It seems to me that ought to be a minimum and not hard top, because as we've created new regions, in some of the regions, we now have 8 or 9 communities in that region. And we also have some folks, at least in South County, we have some folks that will be, who are interested in being at-large members as opposed to representing Deal or Shady Side or West River. So we're at 7 or 8 when you get the new configuration before we ever get those other folks engaged. So I would encourage us to think of this as a minimum, not a top.
We can do that. It needs to be,
Reasonable size.
not, yeah, not as large. So, okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Some of us over here did not get this.
This was handed out last week. Sorry. Okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. We are going to move on to draft policy areas. Okay, let's do a 5-minute break early now, because once we get into this, we're not going to stop. So, until 7. So 5-minute break, and we will resume for the draft policy areas. And you can clean up your desk and roll them out and make room to be able to look at them.
One thing to think about on your flip chart, a variation of that, is to have big post-it notes. And then people have to get up, they can write it, and then put the post-it note on at the end of the meeting. And therefore it's less disruptive, but as it comes to where you can write it down, to connect
Don't mess up Tom.
I know, I'm not, but I need one more underneath probably. Or one page. Okay, so I need one copy of each underneath for Billy Pacific.
Discuss moving east-west up to over.
That's it, and that's the only, that's the only response.
That's the only change.
That's no issues, the other two were accepted as 3 issues, only 1 issue.
So what was
The mountain goal. It was downloaded to you, it was sent to you. No. Oh, no, on your old one. Do you want me to send it to you again?
So considering how much we have got.
It's on your old one. This is like 2
When we
weeks.
get to
This is like 2 weeks.
Hey, you want a party? All right. You have one right now. Yeah, it's not a terrible
Well,
idea.
you know what? We're coming down for free on our own time. Why not? Why not? Let's get some food in here, a little bit of drink, and I don't think
Conversation. Don is going to help you get started, since you've already started. Don's going to show you what you're supposed to be doing.
Alright, folks. Just a quick review.
Okay, so Don's going to start.
They fit something. I'm sure we'll get there. Alright, this is a quick review of the policy areas and that exercise for tonight.
Okay, we're starting.
Alright, we all know the previous policy areas, targeted, managed growth, and rural. These are just some of the descriptions that we have for the current GDP policy areas. Just to put them on the map, just so you can see where we're currently at. In the red is the targeted areas. They pretty much cover all the major commercial areas, corridor areas. The managed is in the tan color. That's all, for the most part, existing residential, maybe some slight commercial. That's with in those areas. And then in the gray is the rural policy area. So tonight, we'll be looking at each individual map and broken down by geography, east, west, north, and south. And you'll be reviewing these maps, both in the maps and this. And just to stress that these are working maps. The boundaries may change from time to time in the course of this process. So by no way is this a final map that you're doing right now. You'll probably be adding some changes in the future. So we have targeted, managed, and rural policy. And here's the GDP table of all the policy areas. Because they were so broad, many of the policies covered several of the policy areas. So when we threw it out to the survey, vision survey, you can ask people if they want to have changes to the current policy areas. Here are the vision survey policy areas that we went over the last meeting. So the next question, we ask people what kind of policy areas that they like to see, any changes, locations, like I said. And here are both policy changes. So we are going to go from 3 to 5 policy areas to help better guide environmental protection, infrastructure, and protecting the character of existing communities. We removed the commercial revitalization sub-area from the survey results because we felt it overlapped with other sub-areas, and we've added the critical economic sub-area, which focuses more on existing regional economic and economic centers. So here are the proposed policy areas. In no particular order. We have resource-sensitive policy area, targeted growth and revitalization policy areas, and there are sub-areas, which are critical economic area, which I just spoke about, town centers, village centers, transit-oriented area, policy area, corridor management area, and then neighborhood preservation policy area, and insular policy area, and then the rural and agricultural policy area. And I will break these down, these policy areas down further. So, resource sensitive policy. This policy area is being split between the existing rural policy area and it's going to be split between resource sensitive area and rural agricultural policy area. This policy area is aimed to preserve and overlay the county sensitive natural and environmental areas. These 7 policies seek to minimize the impact of sensitive areas. And in some cases, this policy area may overlap or overlay a sensitive feature to another policy area. If, for example, if there's a policy area that is rural agricultural, but it contains a sensitive feature, this may overlay on top of that. Targeted growth and revitalization. Targeted growth and revitalization covers areas of development, redevelopment, and revitalization might be focused to relieve pressure from other areas. The current target policy area lumps all the existing commercial corridors and centers together. But from the visioning survey, we saw that people wanted expanded policy areas and definitions of sub-areas. We needed different sub-areas to cover those needs. And one of those sub-areas was critical economic area. If not areas, we could cover areas such as Arundel Mills, EWI, the area around Fort Lee. They're going to have different policy challenges in town centers. Town centers, pretty much know what they are. They're kind of pretty much already defined. Those would be Boynton, Laurel, and Vernon. Continue on with the target growth revitalization. Here are the other remaining ones. We have expanded boundary, which now is going to include the transit-oriented policy area, which will pick up areas next to transit centers on that map. There will be circles within a half mile of the transit station. Half mile within the transit station. That will be its own policy area. So there's other questions we're going to have for you, whether or not we should be half a mile, a quarter mile. So those are questions that you can bring up to us as we're doing this map exercise and to break up first. The other policy area that we want to break down was Village Center, which kind of helps differentiate between the core and natural policy area. Right now they're kind of all mixed in together. We're trying to separate a village area, which will probably represent more of village versus core management area, which would represent something more like Route 2 or Route 3. Neighborhood preservation area. This policy area covers most, but not all, of the current management policy area. This policy represents all existing communities within the private funding area that are not intended for substantial growth or revitalization. This is a new policy, peninsula policy area. There's now a significant push to have policy areas separated into peninsulas that were different from the current managed policy area, what proposed neighborhood preservation policy area. Currently, the communities, for example, communities within the Mayo Peninsula and Severn are both within the managed policy area. But we're actually questioning should they be, and this is a way to separate policies for those two different communities. And the peninsula policy would address how to better address our developed waterfront communities. Lastly, we have rural and agricultural policy area. Again, this is split between the resource sensitive areas and split between this policy area and resource preservation. This was a former or the current rural policy area that we have in 2019. This policy area aims to preserve and continue the county rural agricultural and storage areas. So, the final map policy areas. This is the 5 that we're looking at. We have the resources and policy areas, which covers everything from historic resources to other environmental sensitive areas, even historic scenic roads. Targeted growth and revitalization policy area, which you go down to 5 subcategories. More like a growth in critical economic areas, and town centers and village centers, transit-oriented area and corporate management, neighborhood preservation policy area, peninsula policy area, and rural and agricultural policy area. So what we want to do over the next half an hour is to look over the maps that we've provided for you and mark and edit what we think is best for your individual communities. You've all been separated out geographically by the areas that you represent. We're going to give you half an hour. Please pick someone to report out of what you guys thought about policy areas and their geographical boundaries. Any questions?
Yes, two questions. The definitions of these areas, I think, are largely really good, but I'm curious who developed those definitions? Was that something that has existed for a good long time, or is that something, where did that come?
That was developed by the team.
Okay.
That's also
All right.
part of the.
My second question is, I'm struggling a little bit with the definition of neighborhood and peninsula because there's a lot of character that is shared between neighborhood and peninsula. Clearly, the one way in, one way out is most key for peninsula, but just across the road, you have the same sort of issue. So I'm curious about that, and in particular, in the neighborhood preservation, what is meant by no revitalization?
So for the first question about the peninsula, some of those areas can be kind of similar within the peninsula policy there. Two of the major things are the one way in, one way out. Also, in the peninsula, areas may or may not be within the carbon funding area. Also, we're trying to protect waterfront communities that are within the critical area as well. So those are all major differences in the neighborhood, preservation policy area, which could be somewhere like 7, but it's going to be totally different from the waterfront area. I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Well, I'm curious about, if you could go back to the word definition of neighborhood preservation policy area.
And mind you, these are all the definitions we have.
Page 6.
I didn't see this in our homework, if we had it, I apologize.
No, we didn't have it broken down like this, we just had the general, but here's the handout on page 6 is where it says neighborhood.
So it's the fourth bullet, not intended for substantial growth or revitalization. It's the or revitalization that I've got an issue with.
Okay.
I don't know where that came from, because I think a lot of people in these pink areas would like to see some revitalization.
You know what, I think we did make a change maybe that we may not have filtered into your presentation, but if you look at the handout that that you had in your stack here, so it's a markup that reflects any changes from the definitions that you were presented at the last meeting, and that in the markup it says but may be targeted for revitalization.
All right, so that alarmed me. I just was.
And that change came about when, as we were kind of looking at some of this, we thought it made more sense maybe for commercial revitalization areas to fold into corridor management areas, and then when there's a plan that's developed for those, they can address revitalization goals, and also neighborhood revitalization, where it's that kind of revitalization that needs to happen within the neighborhood.
I had some other general issues, but that was the primary one. And this corrects it.
What's the general purpose of these? I mean, it seems like the devil is in the details, and I understand this is the character they have now, but is that all that means? For its general character?
But we're just general character piece.
Well, so policy means.
Policy, that means real stuff.
This will help guide our future land use decisions. This will help build off of that. For any policy areas that we're trying to, any policies that we have before, like, for example, the current GDP, there's a table of different policies that go into each individual policy area. So that's what we're trying to do.
It's not quite law, but it's pretty doggone certain.
Yes.
You took out commercial revitalization area, and I assume the corridor management area is a replacement for what was the commercial revitalization area.
Possibly. We felt that one could
Well,
be split into
use as the
multiple.
example Maryland to the north. Does that mean that is the example of something that has occurred?
Just one example.
Or that is the area where the corridor road management plan should be applied?
Well, we're looking for answers.
Well, in the first one, you specifically mentioned Richard Highlight.
They're just examples. They're just examples.
Well, it does matter. There are some corridors in the county that are heavily traveled by a lot of people from other states that give an impression of this county. And if you travel down, you know, Ritchie Highway was originally supposed to be like Air Park, and they called it New York. That didn't happen. Didn't happen on the north end for sure. And so when you're looking at how you want to revitalize the county and give it the kind of sense of a very, very special place, you do have to look at the corridors, at specifically Ritchie Highway corridor more than any of the others, because it is internationally and nationally traveled. It gives the impression of Anne Arundel County.
Well, that example, that would go under the order.
Pardon?
In that example, that Ritchie Highway would go under, whoever has that territory, that would go
And then I
under.
think, if you
So we probably-
eliminated one that specifically addressed, example, Ritchie Highway, blah, blah, and then moved the corridor management area, I think it needs to be a little bit more directed. It isn't just about nice roads going from neighborhood to neighborhood. This is a principal, primary route through this county that says, to a lot of people, this is what Anne Arundel County is. Right, we don't know it doesn't make any difference. Or at least be addressed,
Okay.
specific.
Definitely. I think we have two more things, or?
So again, on the neighborhood preservation policy, what's the thinking about the inclusion of public sewers in this or plan to define neighborhoods? Because in South County, there are neighborhoods that don't have either.
Right, well, the thing was, it was kind of carrying over from the managed policy area and making sure that that specific policy area picks up everything within the private county area. So everything that has water and sewer is almost, determined to be developed. And so the South County, we heard a lot that they don't want those communities to be developed. So that was partially the thinking there.
So the areas that are not slated for public sewer, which we consider our no public service areas, are primarily our rural and agriculture policy areas.
But
That doesn't
not
mean-
exclusively.
No, primarily. Not exclusively.
Because some areas are within our service area, but they're on septic.
Right.
But that's not the long-term plan.
Also, the people who live there.
Well, that's going to be a reason to
So,
to the road.
and as you drive around today, you look at the projects that are just finished or still under work. So what is the pipeline that exists today in this building of projects, ideas that they have to move forward? And how's that pipeline of development projects going to impact the timeline and the amount of development or lack of development you're proposing? Because you've already got a lot of stuff in the plan. I mean, the most discussed thing for me, the state highway, for me, had a good opportunity to really redevelop that 14 group of stores. And they chose to say, never mind.
I appreciate that, Gary, and it is an issue, but that's not what we're doing tonight. So what we need to do.
Well, then let's
look at
talk
this.
about how does this work in reality, that there's a pipeline in place of projects either started or starting that are going to affect what this group comes out with. And maybe this stuff can't
This
be
group is going
collected.
to affect what happens to them. So that's what we need to look at. They're not affecting what we're doing. We're affecting what they get to do. And how we're affecting what they get to do is by deciding
And you're
these
talking about
policy
downzoning.
areas. It may be downzoning, you're not downzoning anything. You're coming up with policy areas. We're not talking about zoning at all. We're talking about policy areas. We're not discussing land use or zoning at all right now. We're only doing these policy areas. Then that will determine,
What is
but
resource
we have to start
on this?
somewhere, and this is where we're starting tonight. So you need to look at where we are going forward and where we want to be. What else, we get to determine.
So,
All right, it's almost 6:20. We'll have staff members at each table for each group. And we'll take this on to 6:50, 7 o'clock. For each group. What's that?
What do you want from each table?
To go over each map and just look at the boundaries that are on there right now.
Sorry, concern.
What's that?
Just identify concerns.
We have some specific questions too within each of these areas, and you all will have some. It's just a starting point.
We're working.
exactly what it's on. You have 3 minutes. You get to go first. Who's going to speak? I'll hold. Do you want to take this off? Okay, don't look at that. Look at the format.
Jessup in Maryland City. Jessup in Maryland City, over here. Right now, there is a nice transit, this is the Howard County line, a nice transit area here where there are train stations, but they're not all open and they're not all fully utilized. So this is something that we're looking forward to as a goal to get the cars off of the BW Parkway, which goes along here. And we know is a problem. In Maryland City, it's a development, corridor management development to try to bring more businesses in rather than strip malls. I'll let you.
Okay, so the area that we had an issue with on this map was 175 and just north. For about the last 25, 30 years, especially that a residential, feel what's north of 175 should be the preservation area.
This is all Fort Meade, so it's not really anything that we can change because it's, can't touch it. It's, but it's rural and agricultural and critical economic.
So basically, our intention to Jessup is just everything around each gridlock, whether you're on 95, Route 1, 175, Parkway, it's all gridlock 32. So the idea is not to increase the load on these types of the road infrastructure.
But what is that?
That's the Fort Meade.
Oh, okay, sorry. All about it.
And already in this line, I talked about earlier, pipeline, there's hundreds of homes planned up here already. They're planting these homes on roads that were built for horse and buggy. And
Has this already been developed?
No.
Is that a town center? Are there businesses there at all now?
There's businesses right on the corner of Brockbridge Road and 175.
Okay, so that is a town center already, and there's nothing on this side now.
Now, I think what it's showing that it's a village center, and are you saying don't show it as a village center, show it as neighborhood preservation, or just the area?
On the south side.
On the south side.
175, that is what was talked about in 2004.
But we're talking about what it is now, not what it was supposed to be.
Or what do you want it?
Right.
They want it to be neighborhood preservation. Okay.
We're a community, that's why I wanted to invite you all. We're a community of people that have chickens, cows, horses, ponies. That's the kind of community. And when we went door to door, that's what why they moved to Jessup.
Okay, so are you good with everything else other than this whole piece needs to be purple? Everything else you guys are good for?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the rest of this, I'd have to go.
Elizabeth? We focused basically on that west side. We had a real difficult time because there seems to be pressures of keep it rural, keep it existing, bring sewer in, bring growth, priority funding area. So there's a lot of trouble there with a lot of the existing folks because there's that rural nature there.
Right.
But the neighborhood's changing, which is very, very difficult.
I'm just using words like,
Okay.
Keep it rural.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
I like that.
Come on,
All right.
come on, the time is gonna start, let's go.
All right.
Okay, ready? Go, Mark.
Let me say, we pretty well agreed with the idea of the corridor management, also with the transit-oriented spots within the county here. We found as we got further south here that there was a definition for basically a village center that didn't make any sense. Or actually, it's woods. So we actually are getting rid of it down in here. We didn't have a chance to talk about these areas at all, the rural agricultural areas at all. We really need to talk about that. But most of what we have here are neighborhoods already that we would like to preserve, you know, the way that they are. So, I don't know, we didn't have a lot that we actually were
That's good.
doing on
That's
We
awesome.
did talk about these transit-oriented. I know in my area, there was some pushback 20 years ago to having this transit-oriented development around the Brooklyn Tube Station. And I suggested that we narrow these bands a little bit. But Bill suggested that we keep the half-mile circle because that is the walkable area for the transit.
And maybe the policy
So-
applies differently from
Yeah.
a quarter mile to a half mile, right?
Yeah, right. But I know there would be pushback in these areas for encroaching on the neighborhood.
And we also
Okay.
have one other area that we discussed down in here, which is there's actually a park, and we think that it's owned by, like,
SHA and.
yeah, or something like that, where it could actually enhance a local park. It'd be nice to actually take the land if possible, make it an addition to Queenstown Park. But, like I said, we only got down to about there. And then.
Yeah, I think
we
we
concluded
we had
we
some
need
more
more
discussion
time.
that really that needs to happen with some other areas, so.
Yes.
Would it be possible to put the parks on, to show at least the big parks?
We can show us.
That was one suggestion for this group. They wanted to see the parks and they wanted to see the school.
Yeah, the parks in the schools, that would be good.
Okay, we had a lot of changes. And Alan had a wonderful map to help us.
I was using the iPad. One thing, and this is something that came up in our conversation, we didn't actually directly talk about it. It's not clear to us when one thing precedes another from a policy perspective. So here in Annapolis, we just assumed control and made it white, but there's clearly a peninsula in Annapolis City. And there are agricultural areas inside of it. So I'm not sure what the secession supersedes, whatever that word is. So then we made a lot of modifications, paying close attention to one way in and one way out. And some of these areas were residential and so forth, and we changed them. We had some pink for some reason we didn't understand in the middle of the peninsula. We looked closely at the corridors and made sure that those corridors were right and the edges were right, and made some edits and modifications, added a little bit of definition on the through 2 corridor. Same things up here. There was a town center in an area we didn't really understand town center, so we thought it was more appropriately corridor. This is the beginning of DWI. These commercial areas, more corridor development. This becomes blue. It made no sense that it be green in the middle of all that blue, and it's a big forest right now. So that was basically it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Last but not least. So we had South County. We had a lot of green. And we agreed with pretty much all of that. One of our first overarching for the entire county that we think needs to happen is to have the NOAA maps that show predictions in the next 20 years for sea level rise. Needs to be along the perimeter of the entire county and indicated on these as a resource conservation area and indicated in some way. So we did add some corridor management up primarily along Solomon's Island Road as it passes Rural Town Center and it meets up with West Street here. This traffic is really horrendous, and we think that something needs to happen to really kind of alleviate that. And even though there are residential areas there, it's a thoroughfare. I mean, I don't see how it cannot ultimately become more of a commercial.
So you changed it to a corridor?
This is corridor management.
Okay.
Yeah, want to include all of it.
To corridor management.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
And then also down here on the Mayo Road, changing that to corridor management as well, because that road needs a complete overhaul. And then on the Mayo Peninsula, one thing that we've talked about down there is the possible village center. So we added an area near like Old Stein Restaurant. There's a restaurant and grocery store, And if we had an area down there as a village center, as a hub, that there would be less traffic coming and going off the peninsula, which would help everybody. So we wouldn't have to leave the peninsula to get to socialization and groceries and things like that. So we added a village center down there. And then the other discussion that we had that we'll get to talk about next meeting is, and that was the peninsula overlay. And the question that Kate really raised is, there are some other areas down here, in addition to the obvious 5 peninsulas that we talk about with the Mayo Peninsula and Broad Neck and Annapolis Neck and such. There's areas that are smaller, like Galesville and Chalk Point and Shady Oaks and the Deal communities that are kind of mini peninsulas. So I think that's something that I'm going to take back to the group of the Peninsula Officials and say, okay, is there a scalable definition of what that peninsula overlay is, or does it also apply to some of the smaller, quote unquote, one way in, one way out areas? That makes me think.
The 16 lanes.
16 lanes?
Yes, and so when the Mayo Peninsula becomes another thoroughfare for the Bay access, so have a bridge to go over, then this is all for naught. But anyway.
Did y'all say anything about Wason's Corner as a village center? You know, it got a little design.
Which one's Wason's Corner? I'm not
It's down
sure.
there.
Is that one?
We just acknowledged that we thought it was.
You think so? Okay.
And we talked a little bit about sidewalks and bike lanes, especially on 468 and sidewalks in Deal Center and maybe in North Beach.
Certainly, when the policies start to formulate for those village centers, that has to be it.
Yeah, so some of these areas exist and you want to preserve them that way, and some areas are what you want them to be. And they'll get refined even more when you do region plans. So some of those transit areas may not be appropriate. Further study will show that maybe that's not appropriate for a transit station area or development around it.
Okay, Gary, last word.
One
1
question
minute.
on the last map, I didn't see anything with any kind of corridor management or transportation going down the middle of all that green. And it just seems like my vision in 20 years is there's going to be a demand for low-income housing and affordable transportation all through where today is green. So are we planning for that type of development?
We're gonna keep that up your way.
Thank you all. Y'all did great today. Really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being prepared. Appreciate you getting through all this. Our next meeting is going to be 2 presentations. One from the Environmental Committee for the administration, Pat Johnson and Kate Fritz are going to come and speak to us. And the second half is going to be the Peninsula Coalition Group. That Peninsula Coalition Group that's going to come and speak to us and explain some of their initiatives. So I don't have any homework as of yet, so but watch it now. And you all have your Gmail accounts set up, so please be checking them. If you need help, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you. Anything else from the administration? No? Okay, Ellen.
One request for data, recreation and parks. What is the total amount of public parks in the county? Because there are formulas for how much space there should be in parks per population. And so that would be critical if you discuss.
And we will get that report. That is one of the reports that becomes part of one of their plans. Rex and Parks plans becomes one of our plans. It comes in us.
Okay.
So we will get all
We'll have that
that.
information.
Okay. Yep.
How much we're over or under.
Yep. We will get that. Not by the next meeting, but we
Ellen,
will.
that's available online.
And it's available online. Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you all.